General Kimte walked slowly into the huge command room of the alien ship. His black boots made no sound on the metal floor. The room was so big that it could fit 3 football fields inside it. The walls were covered with bright screens showing star maps and battle plans. Hundreds of alien soldiers stood at their stations, pressing buttons and watching displays. Alien commanders were waiting for him in the center of the room. They were much taller than any human Tay had ever seen. Some had scales like giant lizards, others had too many arms and legs. Their eyes glowed in colors that hurt to look at directly. The smell in the room was strange, like burning metal, mixed with something rotten. Admiral Vex was the biggest alien in the room. His skin was dark green with silver spots. His head looked like a snake, but with 4 eyes instead of 2. When he saw Tay walking toward them, he started to laugh. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with a hissing noise. Look at this tiny human, Vex said to the other commanders. His voice was deep and scary like thunder in a cave. Look how small he is compared to us. The other aliens started laughing too. Commander Roth had 6 arms and looked like a giant insect. His mouth had sharp teeth that clicked when he talked. Why do humans always look so weak? He asked the others. Maybe this is why their planet was so easy to conquer. Tay stopped walking when he reached the group of alien commanders. He stood perfectly still with his hands behind his back. His face showed no emotion at all. He looked like a statue made of stone. The aliens were still making jokes and laughing at him, but he did not react. Then Admiral Vex noticed something on Tay's arm. The human was wearing a short sleeve uniform shirt. On his left forearm was a simple black tattoo. It looked like 3 straight lines with another line crossing through them. The tattoo was very small and plain, nothing fancy or colorful about it. What is that marking on your arm, human? Vex asked, pointing one of his long clawed fingers at the tattoo. Do humans draw pictures on your skin for fun? The other alien commanders moved closer to get a better look at the tattoo. They started making even more jokes about it. Commander Roth clicked his teeth together in amusement. How primitive, he said. These humans put marks on their bodies like animals marking their territory. A tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms named Captain Zull joined the conversation. Maybe it means he belongs to someone else, like a pet, he said with a nasty smile. All the aliens thought this was very funny and laughed even louder. Tay still did not move or speak. He kept looking straight ahead at the big screen that showed Earth in the distance. His home planet looked small and blue from here. The aliens had put big metal rings around it to keep the humans trapped. Those rings had weapons that could destroy entire cities. The human looked scared. Vex said to his officers, look how quiet he is. Maybe he knows we could kill him anytime we want. But Tay was not scared at all. His dark eyes were watching everything in the room. He counted how many guards were at each door. He noticed which aliens carried weapons and which ones did not. He saw the weak spots in their armor and the places where their necks were not protected. Another alien commander joined the group. This one looked like a walking tree with too many branches for arms. General Tay, she said, reading from a datapad. You are supposed to be one of Earth's best military leaders, but you look like just another weak human to me. The aliens kept making fun of his tattoo. They said it looked like something a child would draw. They wondered if humans were too stupid to make proper art. They asked if the marks had any meaning or if they were just random lines. One young alien soldier who had never seen a human before came closer to stare at Tay. Sir, he said to Admiral Vex, why do we even need human commanders? Why not just use our own people to control their planet? Vex smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. Because, human boy, these creatures need to feel like they have some control. It makes them easier to manage. When they think they have leaders, they cause less trouble for us. The alien commanders continued their meeting while making jokes about Tay and his tattoo. They talked about moving more ships to Earth. They discussed taking more humans as slaves. They planned to strip mine the planet for resources. The whole time they acted like Tay was not even there, but Tay was listening to every word. He was learning about their ship schedules and supply routes. He found out which planets they were going to attack next. He discovered the locations of their secret bases. All this information was going into his memory where he would use it later. The tattoo on his arm meant something that none of these aliens could understand. It was not art or decoration. It was not a mark of ownership or a sign of weakness. It was something much more dangerous than any of them could imagine. Commander Roth walked around Tay in a circle like a predator studying its prey. "Tell me, human," he said, "what do those silly marks on your arm represent? Are they supposed to make?" "You look tough." Tay finally spoke for the first time since entering the room. His voice was quiet and calm like still water before a storm. "They are a reminder," he said, "simply a reminder of what." Vex asked, leaning down to get closer to Tay's face. His breath smelled like rotting meat. Tay looked directly into the alien's 4 eyes without fear or hesitation. "A reminder of who I used to be." Aliens did not understand what he meant by this. They thought he was talking about being a soldier or maybe a farmer before the invasion. They had no idea that those simple black lines represented something from Earth's history that would have made their worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. The aliens made plans to attack 3 more human colonies. They decided to increase taxes on Earth cities. They talked about experiments they wanted to do on human prisoners. Through it all, Tay stood silently and listened. He memorized every detail, every name, every location. When the meeting finally ended, Admiral Vex dismissed Tay with a wave of his clawed hand. "Go back to your human duties," he said mockingly, "and maybe get some better artwork next time. That tattoo makes you look like a primitive savage." Tay turned and walked toward the door. His steps were still silent on the metal floor. As he reached the exit, he stopped for just a moment and looked back at the alien commanders. They were still laughing and making jokes about humans and their silly customs. Soon they would learn that some customs were not silly at all. Some marks meant things that could end civilizations. Some humans were not what they appeared to be, and some monsters wore the faces of quiet men who had tried to leave their past behind. But the past has a way of catching up with everyone, even in the cold darkness of space, even when surrounded by aliens who thought they owned the galaxy. The tattoo on Tay's arm was about to remind the universe of something it had forgotten: humans could be the most dangerous predators in existence when they needed to be. Lieutenant Park High sat in her small quarters looking at the old files on her computer screen. She had been General Tay's aide for 3 years, but she never knew much about his life before the alien invasion. The files she was reading now made her hands shake with fear and excitement. The first document was from the Earth Military Archives. It was marked with red letters that said, "Top Secret Eyes Only." The title made her heart beat faster. Kim Tay, subject classification level black operations specialist status, retired, extreme caution advised. Park High had always wondered why her commander was so quiet and why other soldiers seemed afraid of him. Even though he never raised his voice or showed anger, now she was beginning to understand. The man she served coffee to every morning had once been something much more dangerous than a regular soldier. The next file contained photos from 20 years ago, a younger Kim Tay stood in military uniform, but this was not the regular army uniform. She knew these were the black clothes of Earth's Special Assassination Unit. The unit that did not officially exist, the unit that handled problems too dangerous for normal soldiers. Read about something called the Corporate Wars. This happened before she was born, when giant companies hired killers to eliminate their business rivals. The companies built private armies and fought each other in secret battles across the planet. Regular governments could not stop them because the companies had too much money and power. Kim Tay had been recruited into a special program when he was only 18 years old. The program took young soldiers who showed unusual abilities and trained them to become something that was not quite human anymore. They learned to move without making sound. They learned to kill without leaving evidence. They learned to appear and disappear like ghosts. The training was so hard that most candidates died or went insane. Only 1 in 100 survived to become a full operator. Those who made it through were given a simple black tattoo, 3 parallel lines, to show they had completed the program. The lines represented the 3 stages of training: survival, combat, and elimination. Park High found a video file from the training facility. She hesitated before playing it. The screen showed a large room filled with obstacles and targets. A young Kim Tay moved through the course like liquid shadow. He climbed walls without ropes. He moved between laser sensors without triggering them. He eliminated practice targets so fast that the camera could barely follow his movements. The instructor's voice on the recording sounded impressed and a little scared. Subject demonstrates exceptional abilities in all categories. Recommend immediate deployment to active operations. Status approved for black level missions. Black level missions were the most dangerous assignments that existed. These were jobs that regular special forces considered impossible suicide runs that no sane person would attempt. The targets were always heavily protected crime bosses or corrupt politicians who lived in fortress-like compounds, surrounded by armies of guards. Park High read mission report after mission report, each one described Tay going into situations where he was outnumbered 100-1 and coming out alive, while his targets did not. The reports were written in simple military language, but she could see the fear in the words of whoever wrote them. One mission stood out from all the others. It was called Operation Clean Sweep. The target was the entire leadership of the Crimson Syndicate, the most powerful crime organization on Earth. They controlled drugs, weapons, and human trafficking across 3 continents. Their headquarters was an island fortress with radar systems, missile batteries, and 500 armed guards. Normal military strategy would require a fleet of ships and thousands of soldiers, but they sent Kim Tae alone. He swam to the island at night using underwater breathing equipment that let him stay submerged for hours. He climbed the cliffs using only his hands and feet. He moved through the compound like a deadly wind. By morning, every single member of the Crimson Syndicate leadership was dead. Their guards never saw him coming. The security cameras showed nothing but empty corridors and shadows. The fortress that had been considered impregnable was turned into a tomb in one night. After that mission, Kim Tae received the diagonal slash that crossed through his 3 lines. This mark was only given to operators who had completed what the military called extinction-level operations, missions that eliminated entire organizations or networks in a single action. Park High found records of 2 more extinction operations, the Dragon Cartel in South America, completely destroyed in 1 week. The Iron Brotherhood in Eastern Europe wiped out in 3 days each time. Kim Tae went in alone and came out after leaving no survivors. Behind the files showed that other criminals began to fear him so much that they created stories about him. They called him Baba Yaga, after an old monster from fairy tales. Parents used to tell children about Baba Yaga to make them behave. The monster that lived in the dark forest and took away bad children who never came home. But this was not a fairy tale. This was real, and the monster had a human face. Criminal organizations would sometimes surrender without a fight when they heard that Baba Yaga was coming for them. Some crime bosses killed themselves rather than wait for him to find them. The mere mention of his name was enough to make hardened killers run away to other planets. Then the alien invasion began and everything changed. The governments of Earth recalled all their black operations specialists to fight the new threat. But Kim Tae had disappeared. He had vanished into the mountains, trying to forget what he had been trying to become a normal person again. The military searched for him for months. They needed their most dangerous weapon to fight the aliens. When they finally found him, he was living in a small cabin, growing vegetables and reading books. He looked peaceful and calm, like the violence had never existed. But everyone knew that monsters never really die. They just sleep until they are needed again. Park High closed the files and sat in silence for a long time. She thought about all the times she had seen her commander stare at his tattoo with sad eyes. Now she understood why he was not remembering his victories. He was remembering what he had lost, the part of himself that could never come back. The quiet man who drank tea and read poetry was the same person who had once been the most feared killer on Earth. The gentle commander who always said please and thank you was Baba Yaga, the monster that parents used to frighten children. The man who grew flowers in his office was someone who had ended bloodlines and destroyed empires. She realized that the aliens had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak because they did not understand human history. They did not know that Earth had produced creatures far more dangerous than anything in their nightmares they had awakened. Something that should have been left sleeping. Park High looked at her hands and saw they were still shaking. She wondered what would happen when the monster inside Kim Tae finally woke up. She wondered if the galaxy was ready for what was coming outside her window. The alien ships continued their patrols, thinking they were safe in their metal fortresses. They had no idea that death itself was walking among them, wearing the face of a quiet human general with sad eyes and a simple black tattoo. The corporate wars were over, but a new war was about to begin, and this time the monster called Baba Yaga would not be hunting criminals. He would be hunting the aliens who had dared to cage his people. The morning briefing started like any other day. Admiral Vex sat at the head of the long metal table surrounded by his alien commanders. The room was filled with the usual sounds of clicking mandibles, hissing breath, and the electronic beeping of communication devices. General Kim Tae entered the room at exactly 800 hours as he did every morning. He carried a simple brown folder under his arm and walked to his usual seat at the far end of the table. The aliens barely looked at him. They were discussing supply shipments and patrol schedules, things they considered too important for a human mind to understand. Excuse me, Admiral Vex, Tae said in his quiet voice. I have some information that might interest you. Vex looked annoyed that a human had interrupted the meeting. What is it? He said without hiding his irritation. Make it quick, we have real military matters to discuss. Tae opened his folder and pulled out 3 photographs. He placed them on the table with careful precision. The photos showed the command bridges of 3 different alien warships. Each bridge was filled with dead bodies. The alien officers had been killed where they sat, their blood still fresh on their control panels. The room became completely silent. Commander Roth leaned forward to get a better look at the photos. His 6 arms trembled slightly as he picked up one of the images. What is this? He asked, his voice much quieter than usual. These are photos from the destroyer-class vessels Dark Hunter, Bloodfang, and Ironclaw. Tae said calmly. All 3 ships suffered complete system failures during the night shift. The crews did not survive. Admiral Vex grabbed the photos and studied them closely. His 4 eyes moved back and forth across the images. How did you get these pictures? He demanded. These ships were on patrol in deep space. Tae reached into his folder again and pulled out more documents. Ship logs, he said, placing the papers on the table. The Dark Hunter reported engine problems at 200 hours. The Bloodfang lost communication at 0315. The Iron Claw sent a distress signal at 0430. All 3 vessels are now drifting in space as debris fields. This is impossible, Captain Zol said, his blue skin turning pale. Our ships have the best security in the galaxy. No enemy force could board them without triggering every alarm in the fleet. Tae nodded as if he agreed. You are absolutely correct, he said. No enemy force could accomplish this, which is why I thought you should see these additional photos. He placed another set of images on the table. These showed the personal quarters of the ship captains and their senior officers. Each room contained bodies that had been killed with surgical precision. The victims had been eliminated while they slept in beds that were supposed to be in the most secure parts of the ship's. Commander Roth made a choking sound that came from deep in his throat. How many crew members? He asked, unable to finish the sentence. The Dark Hunter had a crew of 850. Tae replied. The Bloodfang carried 920 personnel. The Iron Claw was staffed with 1,043 officers and enlisted beings. Total casualties 3,013. The alien commanders stared at the photos in growing horror. 3 entire warships had been destroyed and their crews eliminated without sending so much as a single emergency transmission. The kills were clean, professional, and impossibly quiet. Who could do this? Vex asked, his voice cracking slightly. What kind of weapon could penetrate our shields and armor without detection? Tae collected the photos and papers, putting them back in his folder. It was not a weapon, he said matter-of-factly. It was a persona person. Captain Zull laughed, but the sound was forced and nervous. One person could not eliminate 3,000 trained soldiers. Even our weakest crew members are trained fighters. Tae stood up from his chair and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. Someone with the right training could accomplish this, he said. Someone who knew exactly where to strike and how to move without being detected. Someone who understood that the biggest ships have the biggest blind spots. The aliens looked at each other with growing unease. They were beginning to realize that something was very wrong. The human was too calm, too prepared. He was not surprised by this news because he already knew it was going to happen. Admiral Vex slammed his clawed hand on the table, demanding answers. How do you know so much about these attacks? He shouted. Why are you the one bringing us this information? Because I was asked to investigate, Tae replied, turning away from the window. As the human liaison, I have access to certain intelligence networks that your people do not. What intelligence networks? Commander Roth asked, his mandibles clicking rapidly. What sources could give you information about our own ships? Tae walked back to the table and placed his Hands flat on the metal surface, the tattoo on his forearm was clearly visible in the bright lights of the command room. Old friends, he said simply, people who remember how to do things that most beings prefer to forget. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The alien commanders found themselves staring at the simple black lines on Tay's arm. The marks that they had mocked yesterday suddenly looked different. More dangerous, more meaningful. Captain Zull stood up quickly, backing away from the table. You, he said, pointing a trembling finger at Tay, you know who did this, Tay? Looked directly at each alien commander in turn, meeting their eyes without fear or hesitation. I know exactly who did this, he said, because I asked him to do it. The silence that followed was broken only by the humming of the ship's engines. Admiral Vex's 4 eyes grew wide with understanding. You are not just a human general, he whispered. You are something else. I tried to be just a general, Tay said, with what might have been sadness in his voice. I tried to be a normal person who grew flowers and read books. But you made that impossible. When you invaded my world, you woke up something that was supposed to stay asleep forever. Commander Roth was backing toward the door, his 6 arms reaching for his weapon. You are threatening the Galactic Empire, he said, his voice high with panic. This is an act of war. Tay smiled for the first time since entering the room, but there was no warmth in it. War. He repeated as if tasting the word. This is not war yet. This is just a reminder of what humans are capable of when you push us too far. The alien commanders were realizing that they had made a terrible error in judgment. The quiet human they had mocked was not a victim or a collaborator. He was a predator who had been studying them, learning their weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to strike. 3 of your most powerful warships are gone, Tay continued, walking slowly around the table. Their crews eliminated without a sound. Their weapon systems disabled, their engines destroyed. All accomplished by one man working alone in the darkness of space. How? Admiral Vex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How is such a thing possible? Tay stopped walking and looked at his tattoo. The 3 lines seemed to pulse with dark energy in the artificial light. Because some humans were trained to be monsters, he said, and monsters never forget how to hunt. The alien commanders were beginning to understand that their invasion of Earth had awakened something ancient and terrible. They had thought they were conquering a weak species of primitive beings. Instead, they had provoked creatures who had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing. The tattoo on General Tay's arm was not just decoration, it was a warning written in a language that the galaxy was about to learn to fear. The simple black marks represented power that could end civilizations and silence that could swallow entire fleets. The first strike had been delivered, and the message was clear. The humans were no longer prey, they had become the hunters. The emergency alarm started screaming through the massive alien flagship at exactly midnight. The sound was so loud that it made the metal walls vibrate like drums. Red warning lights flashed in every corridor, turning the ship into a maze of blood. Colored shadows, emergency blast doors slammed shut, dividing the vessel into sealed sections. Admiral Vex stumbled out of his private quarters wearing his sleeping robes. His 4 eyes were wide with panic as he tried to understand what was happening. Security teams were running through the hallways, shouting orders in their alien language. The sound of their heavy footsteps echoed like thunder through the ship. What is the situation? He demanded when he reached the main security office. Commander Roth was already there, along with Captain Zull and 6 other senior officers. They were all staring at multiple screens showing different parts of the ship. We have lost contact with Deck 7. Roth reported, his mandibles clicking rapidly. 3 guard posts are not responding to communication attempts. The automated sensors show no life signs in those areas. Vex felt his blood turn cold. Deck 7 was where they kept the human prisoners and important supplies. How many guards were stationed there? He asked, already knowing he would not like the answer. 42 soldiers, Roth replied, his voice getting smaller. 2 full security squads with heavy weapons and body armor. They were some of our best trained personnel. All dead, Captain Zull added, looking at his scanner. All eliminated without firing a single shot. The security cameras show empty corridors, but we know someone is moving through those areas. Admiral Vex grabbed the nearest communication device and began barking orders to his remaining forces. Send every available soldier to Deck 7, he commanded. Use the emergency protocols. Seal all access points and conduct a deck-by-deck search. But Sir Roth interrupted, we tried that 20 minutes ago. The search teams never reported back. We think they have been eliminated as well. Vex stared at the security screens in disbelief, showing dozens of different camera views from around the ship, empty hallways, vacant guard posts, abandoned weapon stations. It looked like the crew had simply vanished into thin air, but he knew better. Something was hunting them, something that moved like smoke and struck like lightning. The lights went out, emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in a dim red glow, but those few seconds of complete darkness felt like hours. The alien commanders found themselves looking over their shoulders and jumping at every shadow. Sir, a young alien technician called from his computer station. We are receiving reports from other ships in the fleet. The destroyer Bone Crusher has gone silent. The cruiser Death Strike is not responding to hail signals. How many ships? Vex asked, his voice becoming a hoarse whisper. 12 ships so far, the technician replied, and the number is growing. Every few minutes another vessel stops. Transmitting the pattern is the same in each case. Communication stopped suddenly with no distress signal or explanation. Captain Zoll was studying tactical displays that showed the positions of their fleet. The ships that had gone dark were scattered across several star systems. There was no way one person could be attacking all of them at the same time. Unless what Vex demanded, unless there is more than one of them, Zoll said quietly. More than one of whatever General Tay sent after us. The idea was terrifying beyond words. If the humans had an entire army of creatures like the thing that had destroyed their 3 warships, then the Galactic Empire was facing a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered. These were not regular soldiers who followed rules of war. These were something much worse. Another alarm started blaring, this one even louder than the first. The main computer system announced in its mechanical voice, "Hull breach. Detected deck 12 pressure loss in sections 4 through 8. All personnel evacuate immediately." But there had been no explosion, no weapons fire, no sign of external attack. Someone had cut through the ship's armor from the inside like a parasite, eating its way out of a host. Commander Roth was reading reports from his remaining security teams. Sir, they are saying that the hull breach was not caused by weapons. The metal was cut with some kind of precision tool, something that could slice through battle armor like it was paper. The hunt had begun, and the aliens were the prey. They were trapped inside their own ship with something that could appear anywhere and strike without warning. Their fortress had become their prison, and they were locked inside with death itself. Vex tried to contact the other ships in his fleet to coordinate a response, but half of them were already silent. The remaining vessels reported similar problems: security teams vanishing, weapon systems failing, hull breaches appearing in impossible locations. Admiral Sir, one of his officers called out, "We are receiving a transmission from the Human Detention Center. Someone is asking permission to speak with you." Put it through, Vex ordered, hoping that maybe they could negotiate with whatever was stalking them. The screen flickered and showed a figure in black clothing standing in one of the prison cells. The person wore a mask that covered their face, but Vex could see human eyes looking back at him. "You wanted to see what humans are capable of," the figure said in a voice that sounded like winter wind. "Now, we are not the weak creatures you thought we were. We are the things that hunt the hunters." "Who are you?" Vex asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "I am what your people would call a ghost," the figure replied. "I am what happens when you wake up something that should have been left sleeping. I am the reason why General Tay tried to retire from this life." "Where is Tay?" Vex demanded. "Tell me where he is." The masked figure tilted their head, as if the question was amusing. "He is where he has always been," the figure said. "Watching you, studying you, learning your weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to strike." Another section of the ship lost power. The emergency lights flickered and died, leaving entire corridors in complete darkness. The alien soldiers were too scared to enter those dark areas. They knew that something was waiting for them in the shadows, something that could see in the dark better than they could. More reports came flooding in from across the galaxy. Empire outposts were going dark. Patrol ships were disappearing. Supply convoys were being found drifting in space with their crews missing. The attacks were coordinated and professional. Each strike was perfectly timed to cause maximum damage and terror. Captain Zoll was looking at star charts, trying to find some pattern in the attacks, some way to predict where the next strike would come, but there was no pattern except that every target was important to the Empire's control over human space. "They are cutting our supply lines," he reported to Admiral Vex. Without those shipments, our forces on human worlds will be isolated and vulnerable. That is the point. Vex realized with growing horror. They are not just killing our people. They are destroying our ability to maintain control over their planet. This is not random violence. This is strategy. The masked figure was still on the communication screen. Watching them panic, you made one critical mistake, the figure said. You assumed we would fight you the same way other species have fought you. With ships and armies and conventional weapons, what other way is there? Vex asked. The human way, the figure replied. The way of creatures who spent thousands of years learning to kill each other before you ever arrived. You are about to discover what happens when predators decide to go hunting. Captain Zol's scanner started beeping frantically. Sir, he called out, something is moving through the ventilation system on this deck, moving fast and heading toward the command center. All remaining security teams were ordered to converge on their location, but Vex knew it was too late. Whatever was coming for them had already gotten past all their defenses. The flagship of the Galactic Empire was about to fall to something that should not have existed. The hunt was no longer beginning, it was reaching its conclusion. And the aliens were finally understanding that they were not the apex predators they had believed themselves to be. The news traveled faster than light itself, spreading through the Galactic Empire like a deadly virus. Admiral Vex was found dead in his command chair on the bridge of his flagship. The most powerful warship in the alien fleet had become a floating tomb with over 10,000 crew members eliminated in a single night. Captain Lee Sung sat in her small office aboard the human transport vessel, reading the reports that were flooding in from across the galaxy. Her hands shook as she turned each page. The stories all sounded impossible, but they kept coming from different star systems, different planets, different species on the mining world of Kepler Station. The entire alien garrison had vanished overnight. 2,000 soldiers simply gone without a trace. The only evidence left behind was security footage showing empty corridors and guard posts. The cameras never showed who had eliminated the troops, but the kills were clean and professional. The Fortress World of Nova Prime reported that their planetary governor had been found dead in his private bunker. The bunker was located 3 miles underground, protected by force fields and guarded by an army of elite soldiers. No one could explain how the killer had gotten inside. The governor's final message was a single word transmitted to the Imperial Fleet. Baba Commander Park Min was reading similar reports from his station on Earth. His computer screen showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking locations where alien commanders had been eliminated. The dots were spreading like drops of blood across the star chart. Each red mark represented another impossible kill, another enemy leader who had simply stopped existing. The aliens were calling it the Silent Death because their people were dying without making any sound. Some were found in locked rooms, others in moving vehicles. A few were discovered in the middle of crowded public spaces, surrounded by witnesses who saw nothing. No one ever heard weapons firing or explosions or screams. The targets simply died and their killers vanished like smoke. Captain Knox of the 3rd Galactic Fleet tried to escape by hiding on a remote planet at the edge of known space. He took only his most trusted bodyguards and established a secret base in an underground cave system. The cave was accessible only through a single narrow tunnel that could be watched by sensors and automated weapons. He lasted 3 days. His final transmission to the Imperial High Command was received at dawn on the 4th day. The message was brief and terrified. The tattoo, he whispered into his communicator before the signal went dead. It is not decoration, it is account. The 3 lines are the crime families he destroyed. The slash is when he became something worse. The message sent shock waves through the alien leadership. They finally understood what the simple black marks on General Tay's arm represented. It was not art or personal expression, it was a record of extinction. Events, a tally of civilizations that no longer existed because they had made the mistake of becoming his enemies. More reports arrived hourly. Commander Skull of the 5th Battle Group eliminated while traveling in an armored convoy. General Ma of the occupation forces found dead in his private shuttle while flying between worlds. Admiral Fang discovered in his sleep chamber aboard a ship that was surrounded by 50 escort vessels. Each death was impossible, each killer was invisible, each target was eliminated despite being protected by the best security the Empire could provide. The aliens were learning that their technology and numbers meant nothing when facing an enemy. Who could appear anywhere and strike without warning, Lieutenant? Ko Min was working in the communication center when the most disturbing report arrived. It came from the planet Zarian, where the Empire kept their most important prisoners. The facility was built inside a mountain and guarded by 5,000 soldiers. The warden was a massive alien named General Claw, who had never been defeated in combat. General Claw sent his final message just before midnight. I can see him, he transmitted, his voice filled with terror. He is standing in my office, but he is not. There the cameras show an empty room, but I can see him with my own eyes. He is wearing the face of death itself. The transmission ended with sounds of struggle, then silence. When the relief force arrived 6 hours later, they found the mountain fortress completely empty, 5,000 guards and 3,000 prisoners all gone. The only evidence of what had happened was a message written on the warden's desk in alien blood. Humans remember everything back on Earth. General Kimte continued his daily routine as if nothing had changed. He drank his morning tea, read his reports, and attended his meetings with alien officials. The aliens who worked with him noticed that he seemed more relaxed lately, as if some great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but they also noticed other changes, small things that made them uncomfortable. He knew details about alien fleet movements that he should not have known. He mentioned the names of commanders who had died before the news was officially announced. He sometimes smiled when reading casualty reports, and that smile made even brave soldiers want to run away. The tattoo on his arm seemed different too. The black lines appeared darker, more defined, as if they were feeding on something and growing stronger. The aliens who saw it up close reported feeling dizzy and nauseous, as if looking at something that human eyes were not meant to see. Stories began to spread through the alien ranks. Stories about the human called Baba Yaga, who could walk through walls and appear in locked rooms. They said he could see in complete darkness and move without making footsteps. They claimed he could kill with just a touch or a look. Some stories said there were many Baba Yagas working together, an entire army of human ghosts who had been sleeping until the invasion woke them up. Other stories insisted there was only one and that he could be in multiple places at the same time because death itself had no limitations. The Empire's military leaders tried to dismiss these stories as superstition and fear, but they could not explain the facts. Hundreds of their best officers were dead. Entire fleets had gone silent. Supply lines were being destroyed with surgical precision. The human resistance was not growing weaker, it was becoming an unstoppable force. Captain Zul, who had somehow survived the attack on Admiral Vex's flagship, sent a desperate message to the Imperial High Command. "We are not fighting humans," he wrote. "We are fighting something that wears human skin but is not human. These creatures have abilities that our science cannot explain." The High Command responded by sending reinforcements. Bigger ships, more soldiers, better weapons, but the reinforcements never arrived at their destinations. They were found drifting in space with their crews eliminated and their systems destroyed. The pattern continued with mechanical precision. On distant worlds, alien colonists began packing their belongings and fleeing toward the Galactic core. They spoke in whispers about the human monster who could cross impossible distances in the blink of an eye. Parents told their children to be good or Baba Yaga would come for them in the darkness. The name became a curse word in alien languages. Something you said when you wanted to frighten your enemies or express ultimate contempt. To call someone Baba Yaga meant they were beyond reason, beyond mercy, beyond anything that civilized beings could understand. But the humans knew better. The humans remembered their history and their stories. They knew that Baba Yaga was not a monster in the way the aliens thought. He was something much more dangerous. He was justice with a human face. He was the consequence of pushing a peaceful species too far. The legend was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, and with it came a simple message. The human race would not be conquered, they would not be enslaved, they would not be destroyed, because they had already produced the most dangerous predator the universe had ever seen, and the predator was just getting started. The emergency session of the Galactic Empire High Council convened on the fortress world of Terminus Prime, the most heavily defended planet in known space. The council chamber was built inside a mountain of solid metal with walls thick enough to stop nuclear weapons. The only entrance was through a series of blast doors that could withstand the explosion of an entire startwelve of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat around the circular table that dominated the center of the room. They represented different species from across the empire, but they all shared the same expression of barely controlled terror. These were creatures who had conquered worlds and enslaved entire civilizations, but now they looked like frightened. Children's Supreme Chancellor Drex spoke first, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "We have lost contact with over 300 ships," he announced. "The death toll among our senior commanders now exceeds 2,000 beings. We are facing a crisis that threatens the very existence of our empire." The other council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Minister Vorg, a creature that looked like a walking pile of rocks, spoke. "Next, how is this possible?" he asked. "One human cannot eliminate thousands of our best soldiers. We have weapons that can destroy planets." "It is not one human," Counselor Thane replied, his blue skin pale with fear. "Our intelligence report suggests there are multiple operators working together, a network of human assassins who were activated when we invaded their world." Supreme Chancellor Drex pulled up a holographic display showing General Kim Tae standing quietly in an alien briefing room. "This is the human we believe is coordinating the attacks," he said. "His name is Kim Tae, and our forces report that he has some kind of marking on his arm." The image zoomed in to show the simple black tattoo that had caused so much confusion. 3 lines crossed by a diagonal slash. The council members stared at the marks, trying to understand their significance. "We have consulted with our xenobiologists and cultural experts," Drex continued. "They believe the markings indicate that this human was once part of a warrior caste on Earth, a group of killers who served their governments before our invasion." Minister Vorg made a rumbling sound that indicated deep concern. "How many of these warriors are there?" he asked. "How large is this killer caste?" "That is what we called this meeting to discuss," Drex replied. "We need to determine if we are facing a few dozen operators or something much larger. Our survival may depend on getting accurate information before anyone could respond." The lights in the chamber flickered. The massive blast doors at the entrance made a groaning sound as if something was trying to force them open. The council members looked around in alarm, but their security screens showed nothing unusual. "The doors should be impenetrable," Counselor Thane said, his voice rising in pitch. "They are designed to stop armies, not individuals." The lights went out completely, plunging the chamber into absolute darkness. Emergency power systems kicked in a moment later, but in that brief span of darkness, everything had changed. A figure in black clothing now stood at the far end of the chamber, between the council table and the sealed entrance. The council members scrambled for their weapons, but found themselves unable to move. Their chairs had somehow been locked in place, trapping them at the table. The figure walked slowly toward them, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman. "Remove your mask," one of the counselors demanded, trying to sound authoritative despite his obvious fear. "Show us your face, creature." The figure reached up and pulled away the black mask, revealing features that were unmistakably human. A man with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to look through them rather than at them. It was General Kim Tae, but something about him was different, something that made even these powerful beings want to cower. "You wanted to meet the person who has been eliminating your commanders," Tae said in a voice that was quiet as falling snow. "Now you have that opportunity. How did you get in here?" Supreme Chancellor Drex demanded. "This facility is protected by technology that can level mountains. Your primitive human tools cannot breach our defenses." Tae smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "I did not use tools," he said simply. "I used knowledge that your species lacks because you have never needed to learn it." "What knowledge?" Minister Vorg asked, his rocky skin beginning to crack with stress. "The knowledge of how to kill," Tae replied, walking closer to the table. "You see, your people became so powerful that you forgot what it means to be prey. You forgot that the most dangerous predators are not always the largest or strongest. Sometimes they are the ones who understand patience and precision." He stopped next to Counselor Thane and placed one hand on the alien's shoulder. The touch was gentle, but Thane immediately began convulsing as if electricity was flowing through his body. Within seconds he was dead, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. The other council members tried to scream, but found they could not make any sound. Tae had done something to paralyze their vocal cords, leaving them able to think and feel but unable to call for help. "Your mistake was assuming that humans are like other species you have conquered," Tae continued. "Moving to the next counselor, humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before you arrived. We perfected the art of warfare while your people were still learning to build cities. Another council member died, this one falling forward onto the table. Minister Vorg tried to stand, but his rocky body would not respond to his commands. He could only watch as death moved around the table like a patient teacher giving a final lesson. We created warriors who could eliminate entire armies. Working alone, Tay said, his voice remaining calm and educational. We developed techniques for killing that your science cannot understand. We turned assassination into an art form that would make your worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. Supreme Chancellor Drex was the last one alive, his 4 eyes wide with terror as Tay approached his chair. You cannot kill us all, Drex whispered, finding his voice at last. Our empire spans 1,000 worlds. Our fleets contain millions of ships. Stay placed. Both hands on the table, and leaned forward until his face was inches from Drex's. You are absolutely correct, he said. I cannot kill millions of beings working alone, but I do not need to kill millions. I only need to kill the ones who matter. Drex felt something cold touch his neck and realized that Tay was holding a blade so thin it was almost invisible.